Theresa May insisted in an interview this morning that she did believe in Brexit, but needed to deliver it in a way that preserves the United Kingdom and manufacturing jobs. She was responding to her former Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson, grabbing the headlines, describing her Brexit proposal as deranged.
Chequers badge?
The tensions within the party were on display outside the main conference hall.
There you go, Chequers.
I'll take a couple. I've got the converted here, I think.
That's terrible. That's an assault, that is.
At the traditional closed session of the association officers that kicked off conference, there was applause for the Prime Minister's defence of her Chequers plan, but not from everyone. If you were guessing from that meeting in the hall, did it feel about 50-50?
Yeah, definitely about
50% for Chequers, 50% backing the Prime Minister?
Yep.
How did the other side reveal themselves, the antis? They just sat sullenly?
They didn't clap.
They didn't clap?
Yeah.
I don't think the party's changed its view on Chequers.
Still anti, about 80% in your area.
Oh yes, definitely. Still anti, still wanted to chuck Chequers, yet she's digging her heels in.
Just down the road in Solihull, cheering on one of Theresa May's sworn enemies, some Tory MPs, a sign of how fractured politics has become. Back at the Tory conference, some other Tory MPs suggesting this week will be noisy, but the moment of truth comes in 3 weeks' time.
This conference won't change the reality. The Europeans don't want Chequers, and many of us as backbenchers don't want Chequers. We're going to have to change the policy. We're going to have to chuck Chequers.
And it will happen after the October summit, is your best bet?
I think they'll say no again, and that becomes inevitable.
I do think it's a zombie policy, and I think it needs to be abandoned, because I do think it's the wrong thing. It's the wrong thing for the negotiations.
Boris Johnson's successor at the Foreign Office, Jeremy Hunt, told activists the EU was behaving like the Soviet bloc.
The EU was set up to protect freedom. It was the Soviet Union that stopped people leaving. And the lesson from history is clear. If you turn the EU club into a prison, the desire to get out of it won't diminish, it'll grow. And we won't be the only prisoner that will want to escape.
Some in the EU will struggle to imagine anything less diplomatic, but they're braced for some EU bashing here, and everyone's braced for some internal party positioning too.
What you stand for is heroic. And those who defend those values and belief are heroes.
Another rally against the Prime Minister's approach to Brexit is getting underway tonight. The leaders' team is hoping that a sprinkling of domestic policies, along with patriotic language about taking on Brussels and on the Union of the UK, can get the Prime Minister through this week. It's already hard going, and it's only day one.
Well, with me now is the former Home Secretary, Amber Rudd. Thanks for coming on the programme. Let's start with the Windrush scandal, which is something that happened on your watch, which ultimately cost you your job. Now, this morning, Theresa May said that she would not apologise for the hostile environment on immigration that she created. Should she have done?
Well, there are no apologies that go far enough, really, for the terrible tragedy that was the
But also
Windrush
the hostile environment.
issue. Matt, the really important thing that happened that went wrong with the Windrush cohort of people was the implementation of the environment that you were describing. I mean, it was the oversight that was wrong, so that people who should have had their papers, who should have had everything in place, didn't have it. And it should have been picked up by people, but wasn't. So my contention
Including
is...
by you. I mean, we reported this for 3 months at the beginning of the year, and there was not a squeak out of the Home Office about it.
Oh, there were plenty of squeaks, Matt. There was plenty of response. We were aware what was going on towards the end there, and I put in place the changes that I think will stop this happening again. It was about the oversight. So I put in place a new arrangement within immigration enforcement so that junior officers can contact senior ones. They didn't have that before. I've put in place a contact centre where individuals can call. It's about the oversight.
But too late in the day. And what I want to know is, did you believe yourself in the hostile environment policy that you were defending?
Well, it depends what you mean by that. I mean, I would say that it's important that illegal immigrants do not have access to welfare benefits. It's the differentiation between illegal and legal immigrants. And the real problem with what we had with the people who'd been deported illegally under the Windrush scheme that they hadn't been defined as legal. That was the problem. I think it's simply misleading to try and concentrate on those policies. It was the implementation.
Although we are talking about British
failed.
citizens here.
Indeed.
Right.
And let's not forget either, Matt, that these are citizens, and the new Home Secretary announced about 10 days after I'd resigned that half of the people who had been deported had been deported under Labour. So I think it's a mistake to try and use this to go after the Prime Minister.
Okay. Were you the fall guy for Theresa May on this one?
Personally, I think that any Home Secretary who'd been in place when this was revealed, 64 people apparently deported who shouldn't have been, should have resigned, and I think I was right to do so.
Let's talk about the two things that this party really doesn't want to talk about very much, which is Brexit and Boris Johnson. Isn't the fact that the Tory Party is irreconcilably divided, irredeemably divided over the issue of how to organise an orderly Brexit?
Listen, frankly, there are huge divisions on how we deliver on leaving the European Union. That's nothing new, and this is an opportunity for everyone to say what they want, how they're going to get it, and why the other person is wrong. And certainly over the next few days, you'll see plenty of that. But ultimately, the question is whether people are going to be prepared to compromise, because there's only going to be one deal. There's only going to be one deal that the Prime Minister is going to negotiate with the European Union and bring back to the UK. And then everyone's going to have to see whether they'll support it.
But isn't the problem here that a lot of you just don't believe in the stuff that you're trying to sell? We heard Jeremy Hunt just now give a speech where he describes the EU as a prison. He was a Remainer. You know, you yourself had the problem of trying to sell, a Brexit policy as a Remainer. Isn't that the fundamental problem of your party? You're not the nasty party, you're the dishonest party.
No, I don't think that's true. I mean, my position was that I was a Remainer, and I respect the result, although I regret it, but I do feel we have to deliver on it, and I'm going to make sure that we do that. I'm not somebody who's just suddenly seen the light and is now gung-ho about Brexit, but I do believe we have to do it, which is why I'm committed, and I'm trying to persuade other people to realise that the deal the Prime Minister does and brings back is likely to be the only one we've got.
You famously said that Boris Johnson was the life and soul of a party, but you wouldn't want him driving anyone home. Do you still believe that?
Still not safe in taxis, you're asking me? Well, I couldn't possibly comment. Listen, every conference we go to, Boris is always a big figure. No change there here.
Get back to Chequers. The Chequers deal could probably be sold to the country, but it can't be sold to your own party. And isn't that the point? The Tory Party is now part of the problem, not part of the solution.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. I mean, there are two things that people who are speaking against Chequers will have to look at when they come back. One is the fact that it's the only deal on the table, and that is likely to be the case. She's the Prime Minister, she got elected, she's got to do this negotiation. They'll have to look down and say, this is the one that the democratically elected Prime Minister is proposing to us. And secondly, they're going to have to consider what else. Is it really going to be the ERG, who are going to stop us leaving the EU?
Okay. Amber Rudd, thank you very much indeed. Gary, you heard Amber Rudd there, the former Home Secretary. I mean, this conference is going to be tough, but it won't be as bad as last year, will it? With disintegrating stages and all the rest of it. Or maybe it will.
Well, they're not going fuzzy felt on the back. They're going to project a message with a light onto the back of the screen.
Very sensible.
What we're seeing, the horror for Theresa May really is already sort of playing out in front of us. There she is playing a straight back damage limitation through this week to try and make sure that she can get her plan to the October EU summit. All the crackle, all the excitement is in the rallies that are happening around this conference hall and just outside it. There's one going on at the moment, two actually going on at the moment. That's where the crowd are buzzing. That's where the excitement is. And the danger for Theresa May is that ahead of the deal she hopes she can get, ahead of the vote in Parliament that comes after that, all the energy on the other side will have solidified the rebels. They won't actually be, as they need to be, ground down to lower numbers by Theresa May. They're actually going to be even more solid, perhaps even made more solid by this gathering. On her side, well, in terms of this week, the very definite focus of the rebels is that they don't want to actually make her change tack now. They want to make sure that it can happen after that October summit. So if there's any relief for her, it's that they don't intend to force her off her horse right here, right now. But what happens here, the energy here, could impact what happens next.